The jungle was a living labyrinth, a cathedral of emerald and jade where sunlight dared not penetrate. The air hung heavy and humid, thick with the scent of decay and the musk of unknown creatures. Razor, an iguana of emerald scales and wary eyes, knew this domain better than any other. His world was a tapestry of vibrant greens and suffocating browns, a place where every rustle of leaves could signal both predator and prey. Razor moved with the innate caution of the hunted, his senses sharp, his body a blur of scaled elegance as he navigated the dense undergrowth. The jungle, for all its vibrant beauty, held a secret, a darkness that whispered in the rustling leaves and echoed in the croaking calls of unseen creatures. Razor felt it, a wrongness, a discordant note in the symphony of the jungle. The very air felt thick with unseen eyes, a presence that watched from the shadows. It was an unease that settled deep in his reptilian gut, an ancient fear that whispered of things best left undisturbed. But curiosity, like a venomous viper, had sunk its fangs into Razor's soul. Razor, a creature of habit and instinct, patrolled his territory with meticulous care. He knew every twist and turn of the overgrown ruins, every sun-dappled clearing, every hidden spring that offered a cool respite from the oppressive heat. His ancestors had roamed these lands for generations, their presence etched into the very fabric of the jungle. He scaled a moss-covered monolith, his claws finding purchase on the slick stone. From his vantage point, Razor surveyed his domain. Below him, the jungle sprawled like a verdant sea, its canopy a mosaic of emerald and jade. The air vibrated with the drone of insects, a constant hum that underscored the symphony of the jungle. But today, a new sound reached Razor's keen ears, a low, rhythmic thumping that seemed to emanate from the heart of the jungle. It was a sound that set his scales on edge, a primal beat that spoke of something ancient and powerful. Razor's emerald eyes, honed by generations of survival, scanned the jungle floor. The undergrowth rustled suspiciously, revealing nothing but fleeting glimpses of movement. He tasted the air with his forked tongue, searching for any trace of scent that would betray the source of the unsettling sound. Driven by a primal curiosity he couldn't ignore, Razor descended from his perch. His world, once familiar and comforting, now held an unsettling allure. The jungle, once his sanctuary, had become a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Razor ventured deeper into the heart of the jungle, drawn by the rhythmic thumping that grew louder with every step. The air grew noticeably cooler, the humidity more oppressive. The vegetation took on a strange, almost alien quality. Vines twisted into unnatural spirals, their leaves a sickly yellow-green. He reached a clearing dominated by the ruins of a civilization long gone. Crumbling stone pillars reached for the sky, their surfaces etched with strange symbols that seemed to writhe and shift under Razor's gaze. The air here felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy that made his scales crawl. The rhythmic thumping was almost deafening now. Razor, his senses on high alert, approached a particularly large pillar, its surface covered in grotesque carvings. As he neared it, he realized the thumping was coming from the pillar itself, as if some monstrous heart beat within its depths. Razor cautiously circled the pillar, his eyes scanning the carvings. They depicted creatures unlike anything he had ever seen, beings with elongated limbs and misshapen heads, their bodies covered in what appeared to be scales or feathers. These creatures, frozen in stone, seemed to writhe in silent agony, their expressions twisted into grimaces of pain and terror. They were the architects of this forgotten city, and their creations hinted at a power that defied both nature and sanity. Following a trail of gnarled, twisted trees, Razor entered a grove unlike any he had ever encountered. The air hummed with an almost electrical charge, making his scales tingle. The trees themselves were grotesquely contorted, their branches fused and intertwined, forming a canopy of unnatural arches and spirals. Hanging from these branches were what looked like pods, pulsating with the same eerie light that emanated from the ruins. They varied in size, some no bigger than his head, others larger than he was. A low, guttural humming emanated from within, sending shivers down Razor's spine. He cautiously approached one of the smaller pods, drawn by a morbid curiosity he couldn't ignore. As he neared, the humming intensified, and the pod pulsed with a sickly green light. Razor could feel a faint heat emanating from it, like the warmth of a living creature. Hesitantly, Razor reached out with a claw and tapped the pod's surface. It felt strangely pliable, like tough leather. As he did so, the pod shuddered, and the humming reached a fever pitch. Razor recoiled, his instincts screaming at him to flee. The pod split open, revealing a grotesque parody of a creature. It resembled a lizard, but its limbs were elongated and thin, its head bulbous and misshapen. Its eyes, large and black, stared at Razor with an unnerving intensity. The creature within the pod let out a piercing shriek, a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the jungle. Razor, paralyzed with fear for a moment, watched in horror as the creature unfurled itself from its fleshy prison. It moved with a disturbing fluidity, its limbs contorting at unnatural angles. Razor knew with a primal certainty that this abomination was not a product of natural selection. It was a perversion of nature, a twisted mockery of life itself. The jungle, his sanctuary, had become a breeding ground for horrors beyond his comprehension. He retreated, his senses reeling, deeper into the heart of the twisted grove. Everywhere he looked, he saw more pods, more abominations waiting to be unleashed upon the world. The air throbbed with the creature's combined humming, a chorus of unnatural life. Razor stumbled upon a clearing, and what he saw there chilled him to the core. A massive structure of bone and metal rose from the jungle floor like a macabre monument to a forgotten deity. It pulsed with a sickly green light, casting grotesque shadows that danced and writhed around him. Razor watched in terror as more of the creatures emerged from the structure, their misshapen bodies silhouetted against the pulsating light. They moved with a disturbing purpose, their black eyes reflecting the unnatural glow of their creator's handiwork. Razor had heard whispers of the Plutonians from the elders of his kind, stories whispered in hushed tones around flickering fires. They spoke of beings from beyond the stars, creatures of unimaginable power who had descended upon the world in ages past. The Plutonians, they said, were drawn to the jungle's life force, to its raw, untamed energy. They had come seeking to harness that power, to bend it to their will. But in their hubris, they had unleashed a curse upon the land, a taint that twisted and corrupted everything it touched. Razor now understood the truth behind the elders' tales. The Plutonians were real, and their legacy lived on in this corrupted grove, in the pulsating pods and the grotesque creatures that crawled within. He had stumbled upon the remnants of their twisted experiments, a testament to their insatiable hunger for power. The rhythmic thumping that had led him here was not the beat of a heart, but the pulse of a dying world. The Plutonians had poisoned the very lifeblood of the jungle, twisting it into something monstrous and wrong. Razor knew he had to escape this cursed place, to warn the others of the danger that lurked within the twisted grove. But as he turned to flee, a new sound reached his ears, a low, guttural growl that seemed to reverberate through the very air itself. Razor froze, his emerald eyes scanning the shadows for the source of the growl. The creatures from the structure paid him no heed, their attention focused on some unseen task, but Razor could feel eyes on him, watching him from the darkness. He caught a flicker of movement in the shadows of a massive, pulsating pod, its surface covered in grotesque symbols. The growl came again, closer this time, a deep, guttural sound that sent shivers down Razor's spine. Slowly, cautiously, Razor approached the pod, his senses on high alert. The air around it crackled with an almost electrical intensity. The growl seemed to emanate from the pod itself, as if some monstrous creature were imprisoned within. As he drew closer, the pod shuddered, and the symbols on its surface glowed with an eerie luminescence. Razor could feel the heat radiating from it now, a suffocating heat that made it difficult to breathe. The fleshy wall of the pod split open, revealing a single, baleful eye. It was an eye of reptilian yellow, shot through with veins of crimson, and its pupil was a black slit that contracted and expanded with predatory hunger. It stared directly at Razor, and a voice as cold and ancient as the stars themselves echoed in his mind. So the curse lives on.
It's time for the remake.
The jungle was a suffocating embrace. Razor, a young iguana with emerald scales, clung to a moss-covered branch. He moved with practiced stealth, his senses alert to every rustle, every snap. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of decay and an unfamiliar metallic tang.
This was my home, yet it felt alien, hostile.
Razor had always felt safe within the emerald embrace of the jungle. The rustling leaves were his lullaby, the scent of damp earth his comfort. But tonight, the familiar felt different, tainted by an unseen terror. He paused, pressing his side against a cool leaf. He continued his journey, his heart pounding against his ribs. Razor was heading for the oldest part of the jungle, a place where ancient trees clawed at the sky. It was there, in the heart of the Emerald Labyrinth, that the Council of Elders resided. A blood-curdling scream shattered the oppressive silence, echoing through the jungle like a harbinger of doom. It was a sound that made Razor's blood freeze in his veins, a scream that seemed to claw at his very soul. A scream drenched in agony and something else, something profoundly disturbing and utterly alien, like the wail of a tormented spirit.
What in the world?
He followed the sound, his scales prickling with a growing sense of dread, each step heavier than the last. He found the source of the scream near the bank of the watering hole, a place now tainted with an eerie stillness. A young iguana, barely more than a hatchling, lay convulsing violently on the jungle floor, its body writhing in unimaginable pain. Its once vibrant scales were turning a deathly gray, its eyes glowing with a malevolent inner light that seemed to pierce the darkness.
Please, help me!
As Razor watched in horror, the young iguana's body contorted grotesquely, bones snapping and twisting at unnatural angles, the sound echoing like a macabre symphony. The transformation was swift and brutal, a nightmarish spectacle that seared itself into Razor's mind. He knew with a chilling certainty that this was no natural illness. This was something far more sinister, a curse from the darkest depths of the unknown, a malevolent force that defied comprehension. The Council of Elders, ancient iguanas with scales the color of jade, listened intently as Razor recounted the horrifying events. Their ancient eyes, filled with a wisdom born of centuries, held a chilling knowing that sent shivers down Razor's spine. The air crackled with unspoken terror, thick and suffocating.
The Plutonians, they have returned.
He spoke of a time long ago when beings from the stars descended upon their world like a plague. Their arrival brought chaos and a darkness that nearly snuffed out all life.
They are a plague. They corrupt everything they touch, leaving behind a trail of death and decay.
They spoke of a curse, a terrible affliction that twisted the very essence of life into grotesque forms. The Plutonians were back, and their return spelled doom for the jungle and its inhabitants, a nightmare reborn.
Razor, his heart heavy with the Elder's ominous pronouncements, knew he had to act. He ventured into the heart of the jungle, a place where the earth still bore the grotesque scars of the Plutonians' last visit.
It was a place of deathly silence, where nothing dared to grow. The crash site was a nightmare frozen in time, a haunting tableau of destruction. The air hummed with a sinister energy, and the ground was littered with the skeletal remains of the Plutonian ship. It was a stark reminder of the invaders' malevolent power, a testament to their terrifying legacy.
As Razor approached the wreckage, he noticed a trail of crimson liquid seeping ominously from the heart of the crashed vessel. It pulsed with an eerie luminescence, and the air around it shimmered with an unnatural heat. It was a sight that filled him with primal terror, yet he pressed on.
A figure coalesced from the shadows of the wreck. It was vaguely humanoid but grotesquely elongated, its limbs twisted unnaturally. Its skin shimmered like oil on water, and its eyes glowed with an eerie, malevolent light. The air grew thick and cold, suffocating in its intensity, as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. The Plutonian apparition turned, its gaze fixing on Razor with a predatory hunger. The young iguana felt a wave of terror wash over him, threatening to paralyze him with its icy grip. But within him, a spark of defiance ignited, burning through the fear. He would not surrender his home without a fight, no matter the horror before him.
"This is my home," Razor hissed, his voice barely a whisper, yet filled with a primal fury. But it was a whisper filled with the fury of a cornered animal, ready to unleash its wrath.
The Plutonian tilted its head as if intrigued. The jungle held its breath. The confrontation had begun.